Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Independent Producers Live Showcase. And today is Wednesday, 9/11.
Wow, time
We're
passed.
very conscious of that all day. I've been
Wow.
thinking about 9/11. Those people back there acknowledging what happened, what was it, 18 years ago?
Yep,
I think it was about that.
Yep.
But anyway, we have call in today from Frosty Wooldridge, world-renowned bicycle traveler, traveled on 6 continents. He's a speaker everywhere. And can you hear us all right, Frosty?
He's not on the phone yet.
No,
Oh.
yeah. Okay, just keep talking.
Okay, no, that's all right. I wanted to tell him that what I had, what I was, the strange death of Europe versus the strange decay of American. And what happened when America keeps taking in more and more immigrants. I can't get over, even here in Portland, how the immigrants have, actually they were in a big way responsible for the homeless situation, because they have taken over housing. There just isn't as much available now. And I'm really not sure how else to put it. More and more people have been coming into Portland. There are more buildings going on, more apartments taken over, but less housing. So now our homeless have been increasing. I think it's up over 5,000 now. And I guess everybody's going to have to be counted soon on the
census deal. Yeah.
That's going to have to happen anytime soon. A lot of the problems that he has referred to here are to do with Canada, United Kingdom, Sweden, Norway, Germany, South Africa, New Zealand, South America, Mexico, and Australia. How the immigrants have kept coming into all those cities. And I'm so glad that Trump is trying to stop things, from getting it out of control. Who was it? Merkel let everybody into Germany there for a while. France, they just let everybody in. And when they come in, they start taking over with their own Sharia law, their own courts, a little bit of everything else that they do. Their own city councils. They have patrols by Muslim immigrants who detest and do not go to the laws of wherever they are. The United Kingdom has honor killings. That means killings of women that have done whatever that don't please them. Terrorist attacks from its own immigrant citizens. Female genital mutilations, which I think is just hideous. Killings of gays and disregard for anything British. In other words, the immigrants who created a parallel societies that possess nothing in common with where they are. In other words, they don't come in and take over, adapt to where they are. They just go by their own laws. They have a Quran, and that's what they are going to adhere to. Do we have Frosty on the phone yet?
He called and then the call dropped.
Okay.
Oh.
Waiting for him to call back.
Okay.
Okay. That's fine. There's one thing I couldn't get over. Norway. So then Norway boasts Oslo, where there are nearly 40% of Muslims dominate the city and feature Sharia patrols to ensure that Norwegians do not break Islamic laws. In other words, they've come in from their own country, created their own laws right there, and now they're after the Norwegians. Well, actually, the Norwegians leave their own cities to get away from all this because of Muslim rule. Fortunately, Frosty has friends in all these countries, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, that send him updates of what thing is really going on to these countries. So when he puts stuff in, and you have his website available under Frosty Wooldridge, that's because he or people he knows have seen these things. And it's certainly they're trying to suppress the tension and the conflict and the cultural chaos, mayhem occurring in Europe. I think it's that title of this whole thing, The Strange Death of Europe, Immigration, Identity, and all that. It's just extremely unfortunate. One of the things he's going to talk about sooner or later is the Muslims attacks at Fort Lauderdale, massacre of gays, or San Bernardino, Christmas slaughter, or Times Square car bomber. We examined 23 to 27 honor killings in the USA annually, or the 500,000 female genital mutilation cases in the USA caused by Muslims. It's almost hard to grasp.
Frosty's on the phone now.
Okay. Frosty?
Yes, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be with you, Richard, and certainly all the listening audience here. And
Can you turn him up just a little bit? Hello?
Can you hear me now okay?
Yes, that's good.
Not quite as good as we were used to.
Hit him a little bit more. Speak up a little bit, Frosty.
Okay, testing.
There you
1,
go.
2, 3, 4.
There you go. You got it. You got it.
Well, that's good.
You good? Yep, that's good. Real good. Okay. Start him up.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure to be with you, and hello to
Bruce.
your listening audience across the country. And hopefully tonight we're going to have quite a frank and sobering discussion about what's happening to America.
Great. I've tried to start in on it a little bit, mostly talking about what happened to Europe from one of your mailings.
Yes, well, for those of you who would like to really understand what's happening to America, what's happening to Canada, and what's happening to Europe, and certainly all of Australia, the mass immigration format that has been forced on all of the citizens of all of these regions, first world countries around the world, is continuing at a very rapid pace. And I want to just give you a couple of quotes. The first one was by James Walsh, who was the former director he was the former Associate General Counsel of the United States Immigration and Naturalization Service back in 1991. He said, and I'm quoting, "Immigrants devoted to their own cultures and religions are not influenced by the secular, politically correct facade that dominates academia, news media, entertainment, education, religious, and political thinking today. These immigrants claim the right not to assimilate, and the day is coming when the question will be, how can the United States regulate the defiantly unassimilated cultures, religions, and mores of foreign lands? Such immigrants say their traditions trump the U.S. legal system. Balkanization of the United States has begun," unquote. I really want you to breathe that in because you're seeing the manifestation of that, and he stated that back in 1991. This quote is from 1991. And already here in the United States, we have a documentation of somewhere around 35 jihadist training camps here in the United States from New York, Pennsylvania, all the way into Michigan, all the way into Florida, across into Montana, into Oregon, and down into California. And these are documented. And the reason they get away with what they're doing is because they're on private property. And these jihadists are training to, at some point, unleash themselves here in the United States. So what we're doing is happening right now all over Europe, a disintegration of European culture. And for those of you who would like to, I highly recommend a book by Douglas Murray. It's titled The Strange Death of Europe: Immigration, Islam, Identity. That is the title of the book. And he goes point by point. He's a British journalist. Point by point, he shows how the mass immigration that has been allowed, with over 2 million immigrants that have come into all of the countries of Europe, that no one can speak up, no one can say anything. The media totally dominates everything. And so it does not report the knifings, does not report the honor killings, it does not report the female genital mutilation, it does not report the rapes that are going on by the tens of thousands, all from these Islamic immigrants coming out of Africa, which is a part of their culture, and certainly a part of their culture there in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Yemen, Syria. You can go through all of these Muslim countries, and that is what's going on. And of course, I want you to know that I have read the Quran. It is one of the most vile, if not the most barbaric books on the planet.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is it's manifesting over here in the United States right now, Richard, and that's what I want to cover. And for those of you who would like to follow through with this interview, I have a 22-part series that's on News with Views. You go into the archives, and it's Muslims being impregnated into America, and that was a 12-part series. The other one was Impregnating America with Muslims. That was an 8-part series. Oh no, and the most violent religion on earth. That was the 8-part series. Then you have Muslims in America. That was a 22-part series. But just go back into newswithviews.com or go on the internet, and you'll see that series. If you want to really educate yourself as to what is happening not only to America, but what's also happening to Canada and what's happening to all of Europe right now. And it's nothing to fool with, folks, because we are in the same crosshairs of Islam here in the United States. And I guess this quote is the one that's the most important because it just tells you what they're going to do. This is from Omar Ahmad, the director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. And this particular Council on American Islamic Relations, known as CARE, has been, indicted as a co-conspirator for terrorism here in the United States. And why they haven't been thrown out of the United States and have all of their leaders arrested, I don't know. But here's what he said. This is point blank. Quote, Islam isn't in America to be equal to any faith, but to become dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on earth, unquote. So there you have it. They're telling you what they're going to do. And right now they're getting the old adage, if you get a camel can get his nose into a tent, pretty soon he'll get his haunches into a tent, and then they have the whole camel in the tent. We now have over 100 Muslims are running for public office here in the United States. 2 of them are in some of the highest places in the United States, and both of them are not citizens of the United States. I think Rashidi Tlaib is a citizen, but when she became a House member 2 years ago or a year and a half ago or whatever it was, she wrapped herself in the Palestinian flag. She is a Muslim, period. And she has no affinity to America whatsoever. She's right out of Detroit, Michigan, which is now the little Baghdad of the United States with over 350,000 Muslims. And they are practicing Sharia law there. And that's where the two doctors who were Muslims, one was a woman, one was a guy, and their staff of 5 had been committing female genital mutilation on all of these little girls now for over 10 years. They got taken into court, and they got off on a technicality. But according to the DHS Assistant District Attorney on February the 2nd, we now have, and this was a press conference, I listened to it, that's why I know exactly what's going on. His name was Ed O'Callahan. We have 500,000 cases of female genital mutilation in this country, and that is also against U.S. constitutional law. It's assault and battery. You could go to prison for 5 up to more years for assault and battery, and yet these people are getting away with that in our first world country with this 6th century barbaric practice. And for those of you who do not know what female genital mutilation is, it is a complete literally scalpel or glass or razor taking out the genital parts of a young girl under the age of 10. And they don't use any sterile technique or anything, and that's why so many of these children come down with sepsis, and they have vaginal infections. Here, it was going on so much by the Somali immigrants in Denver, Colorado, we had to put a new law out that if you cut your daughter, it's 5 years in prison, $20,000 fine. And so they stopped bringing their little daughters into the hospital, and just simply, if they died of sepsis, they just buried them in the backyard. So that's what's going on in America, fellow American citizens.
Wow.
And now the same press conference there in Washington, D.C. that I watched. We now have between 23 and 27 honor killings every year in the United States. That means some husband, brother, uncle, father will kill his wife or daughter for disobeying or ticking him off. In other words, for wearing jeans or becoming too westernized. And in fact, last fall, a year ago, I was down in Rocky River in Ohio, and a Muslim father, an immigrant to our country, shot his daughter in the head twice while she slept to make sure she died, because he was upset that she was wearing jeans and becoming too westernized. So the two quotes that I've already quoted to you,
Frosty?
They are coming truer by the second, by the day, by the hour.
Frosty?
Mm-hmm.
How do they get away with this honor killing? I don't understand how the killing is killing. It's murder. How do they do that?
Some of them haven't. Haven't gotten away with it. I think the guy that ran over his daughter in Phoenix, Arizona, 2 years ago, he got 34 years in prison.
Wow.
But what's happening is, in these honor killings, they're simply not. If they don't get caught, these Muslims who are killing their wives or daughters are simply burying them in the backyard. And the only way we catch the ones we catch, I want you all to know that if you look up on the United Nations report, Muslims kill 20,000 women every year, honor killings. 20,000. I want you to get that number down in your head, because it's almost horrific beyond belief.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and they kill them if they don't have enough money to have a second wife or a third wife or a fourth wife, or they want a younger wife. They will kill that wife that they have, known as an honor killing, or if she spoke up and did something that they didn't like, they simply kill her. And that they cut her head off, they decapitate her, or they suffocate her, or they shoot her, or they stab her. As a matter of fact, I'll give you another statistic that I researched, and you all know that I do excellent research. No stone unturned. I source everything. I get the facts. What's going on right now in London, England, there are two parallel societies. The Muslims, about 2 million of them, and then the rest of the British. And nobody that's British goes into the Muslim, London, and of course the Muslims get to go anywhere they want. But what's going on right now, they've had 1,100 acid attacks. Acid attacks. And Muslims, when they get a woman who doesn't do what they want or they're really upset with that woman, they simply take hydrochloric acid and they throw it in her face to disfigure her and blind her. Because once you get that hydrochloric acid in your face, I mean, it just eats your face up literally within seconds, and there's no going back. You can go online, you can go to YouTube, and just look up Islamic acid attacks, disfiguring acid attacks by Islam, and you will see you'll see hundreds of pictures of women who've had their faces completely disfigured. Well, guess what? That's coming to America at some point. I'm waiting for the first reports on that also.
Wow.
I don't see how we can tolerate that.
Well, we are. That's the problem. We are tolerating that. Again, 23 to 27 honor killings in the United States that we catch here right now. The ones we don't catch, who knows? But the female genital mutilation that's been going on in this country, we're not stopping it. We're not doing anything about it. And it's going on every single day, every time, and we have around, the official reports are that we have 3.5 million Muslims in America since 1990. And we used to have only 300 mosques in this country. Even my little town of Golden has a mosque already. And, of course, the property values around it is right downtown, right in the middle of the residential area, and the property values for all the people around the mosque have just dropped like a brick in water. But what has happened is that we are such a politically correct atmosphere right now that nobody wants to be called that R word, racist, or the X word, xenophobe, or N word, which is nativist. And so the Muslims are literally getting free rein here in the United States to carry on their cultural norms. And unfortunately, as James Walsh said in his speech there back in 1991, they are trumping our constitutional laws right now with their lawlessness and their religion. And guess what? There were only 300 mosques back in 1991. There are now well over 2,400 mosques here in the United States.
Okay. That's just too much.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. I don't know. That's probably hard, but these other things, these other acts that they do, that's what's so hard to deal with. Having courts, I didn't understand about courts. Having 150 Sharia law courts. Are there really that many in London?
That's correct. There are 150 Sharia law courts. That's because it's either de facto or simply the no-go zones there in London. But they are practicing their Sharia law and their Sharia courts. They can kill a woman just as fast as they want to. They can cut your hands off or cut your head off as they wish. And there's also 50 city councils now that are all dominated by Muslims, and that's true right there in Minneapolis, Minnesota right now with over 100,000 Somali immigrants. And, of course, the same thing in Detroit, Michigan, with over 300,000 African and Middle Eastern Muslim immigrants. And guess what, folks? In Switzerland, over 80% of the Somali migrants are on welfare. That's documented. You can go to Breitbart News. It was well documented. But here in the United States, 93% of these Muslims are on welfare. As a matter of fact, there was a huge, earlier this year, a huge scandal in Minneapolis where the Somalis, the store owners, were fraudulently charging EBT cards to the tune of $100 million That's your money, taxpayer American dollars, and they were literally shipping out with immigrants going back over to Somalia with $1 million in a suitcase in cash. That is documented. That's your money. And again, 93% of these Muslims who can't work, won't work, don't work, because they simply have no educational propensities whatsoever. And I don't know if you would like to hear this number, but you can go to brainstats.com. The average of African immigrant coming into this country has a 68 IQ. 68 IQ. So they literally can't, they don't have the intellectual horsepower to understand a division problem. They can't even figure out how to do a division problem. So the schools right there in Minneapolis have totally collapsed, as well as they have in Detroit and even New York and Miami. And so they are teaching them under the Quran, and so all they're learning is all the Quran teachings, and they're not learning anything about America. And I can tell you this: I was just in Minneapolis. I toured through 40 states this summer. There are more black Muslim flags in Detroit and Minneapolis, and there are no Old Glory American flags in those cities, period. They simply are not Americans. They don't intend to become Americans, and in fact, they're going to do everything they can to create their own little parallel society, and they're doing a great job. I was also up in Lewiston, Maine. Lewiston, Maine has been totally taken over. The whites have fled totally, and the schools are in total disarray. No American white girl dares walk down the streets of Minneapolis, and they call it Somaliland. The same thing in Detroit, and certainly the same thing right there in Lewiston, Maine.
Well, I know that they cost us $330 billion, the immigration. It's such a huge number, it's almost hard to comprehend.
Yeah, you can't get your mind around it. You have to understand that our tax dollars are paying for the plane rides, paying for the apartments, paying for the food, paying for the transportation, paying for the cars, paying for the electricity and utilities, for all of these people that get to come over here. For those of you who would, I think it's called Refugee Watch. Oh, no, it's called RefugeeResettlementWatch.com. Ann Corcoran.
Okay.
So if you want to go to that site, you will get a tremendous amount of information of how and where your money is going. Again, www.refugeeresettlementwatch.wordpress.com. That's what it is. That's correct. www.refugeeresettlementwatch.wordpress.com by Ann Corcoran. Ann Corcoran, she's absolutely brilliant. And for those of you who want to get the information, go to jihadwatch.com or .org, and you will get so much information from these two websites. You will just get sick to your stomach to see how fast these Muslims are infiltrating literally every aspect of American society. They just voted another Muslim into a big high office down there in Georgia. And they're moving fast, folks, because they have one agenda, their prime directive. And certainly I've already said it with that quote: Islam isn't in America to be equal to any faith, but to become dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Period. That's what's coming. That's what we're facing. And after reading the book on the strange death of Europe, if you read that book, you will get extremely depressed, because you can see it happening here in the United States right now also.
We do depend on Trump to do some of this help. I know it.
He's being completely neutralized by the Democrats.
Yeah, that's right. They're trying to get as many people in along the south border. We haven't even talked about that.
That's correct, and I was down on the border. I want you all to know, you all know that I ride a bicycle. I did. I rode from Canada to Mexico this summer on the Continental Divide. But before that, I took my motorcycle, and I rode a circumnavigation of the United States. I did 40 states, and I rode from Denver, Colorado, all the way to El Paso, Texas. And El Paso, Texas is no longer an American city. Spanish is the dominant language, and probably somewhere around 60 to 80% of El Paso is now Mexicans. I'm not kidding you.
No,
the dominant language in El Paso is Mexico, is Spanish, and schools are taught in Spanish, and it literally is being taken over by Mexicans. They simply have, the hills are just literally covered with hovels of Mexican shanty houses. It's like they're called colonias or new neighborhoods, and there's no getting it back, I can tell you. And then I went down along all the way to Brownsville, Texas on my bike, and I got to see all the trash and the filth and the garbage and the junk everywhere. And again, if you're speaking English, you're pretty much in the minority along the entire Texas border all the way to Brownsville. And I got to tell you, for those of you who don't know this, by 2042, according to the PewResearch.org, go to Pew, it's called PewResearchCenter.org.
Yeah.
Their predictions are that Caucasian Americans, the ones that built this country and created the U.S. Constitution, will be the new minority, as Mexican, Latino, Hispanics will become the new majority by 2042.
No.
That's an absolute fact coming out of the Pew Research Center and quite a few other centers also, but you can look it up, PewResearchCenter.org or .com, and those figures will come up, that the white people of America will become the new minority at 49%, and the Latino, Mexican, Hispanics will become the new majority by 2042.
So the cost is just huge for that.
Unbelievable. For those of you who don't know it, as much as Trump has done everything he could do to stop the drug trade by putting the wall up and all that, the United States is taking in about $120 billion in drugs a year. And so that's going throughout. MS-13 gangs have a network that works just as well as the Greyhound bus stations, distributing the drugs all over. And then, of course, every year, $80 billion a year goes out in cash transfers. Cash transfers. And look that up if you want to make sure. Sometimes I'm a little off on these because I'm giving you these from some of the articles I've written. But we're being bled to death by the massive immigration, both legal and illegal, by the cash transfers going out of the country every year to the tune of $80 billion.
With 80 million births worldwide every year. I know we haven't covered too much on population. I know we're trying to cover everything here. 80 million births. I think to myself, how can we ever stop that? How can we communicate to people to cut way down and do a logical birth rate? And I do think Muslims are trying to have as many kids as they can.
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, you're correct, Richard. I talked to a lady who had been over in Africa as a Peace Corps, and she said every Muslim man never works. The women are the ones that do all the food, the cooking, everything else. Muslim men, the only thing they have to do is marry 4 women and father 8 children each. And that is the norm over in Africa, 8 children each woman. And for those of you who don't know this, you can look it up on the internet, or you can look it up on the newswithviews.com. I wrote a piece called "The Deadliest Birth Rate for All Humanity." I think I wrote it last fall, a year ago, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I did all the research, and Africa right now at 1.1 billion people is going to double to 2 billion by 2050, which is only 31 years from now, and over 4 billion by the end of the century, around 2095. And the real crisis is, no matter how much you immigrate them, how much you migrate them, how much you allow them to come pouring into your country, they will always have many, many more hundreds of millions of themselves to dump onto your country. and ultimately exponential growth will destroy all first world countries if they allow this mass migration to continue. The same thing's happening with India. India is at 1.2 billion people right now. They're headed to 1.55 billion. That's 350 million more people, okay? India right now is chain migrating into the United States by the hundreds of thousands. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions. And because they're growing by 16 million people net gain every year, they can't feed them, they can't work them, they can't house them, but they sure as heck don't mind us taking them, or Canada taking them, or Europe taking them. And of course, China is also bursting at the seams with 1.4 billion people, headed for 1.5 billion in 30 years, and they are chain migrating. For those of you who don't know this, I just visited up in Vancouver, and I've been going to Vancouver, British Columbia now for over 45 years. It used to be a beautiful, Canadian city, Canadians everywhere. It's now been taken over by the unbelievable Chinese. They own Vancouver. Chinese signage, schools in Chinese, a Chinese language, and all of the whites have been run out of Vancouver. It's no longer a Canadian city, and they don't care. And as a matter of fact, at some point, it would be my projection that the Chinese will secede from the Canadian. From Canada itself, and create a whole new complete Chinese state and a new beachhead for the Chinese to simply pour into all of Canada and British Columbia, because their numbers are exploding off beyond any kind of sustainability.
Wow.
I don't know how we can keep up with that.
I know. Most people say, Frosty, how come you're so positive? How come you have such a high energy and all of that? I got to tell you, it is very depressing. It's very sobering. And I've had other people say, well, Frosty, you're a fearmonger. And my answer to that is this. I am a journalist. I am an American citizen. I am a world traveler of 6 continents now, and almost 100 countries, and I've already seen what's coming, and I saw it 30 years ago, and I've been writing about it ever since. But here's the reality of what's going on. The facts are not racist. The facts are not xenophobic. The facts are not nativist. What I'm sharing with you are facts. And so you can call it fear-mongering, you can call it every name in the book, but the question is, what are you going to do about it? Because these are only facts. Facts don't, they have no color. It doesn't mean if you're black, white, brown, red, or yellow, doesn't make any difference. These facts are going to affect every American and non-American citizen here in the next 30 years as we continue to grow by over 1.7 million every year. And that means with the birth rates and the immigrants, we're going to add 140 million more people to the United States of America. And I would encourage every one of you to go to numbersusa.com or numbersusa.org, numbersusa.com or .org, and get the 2 videos. One of them's 5 minutes, and this video is called Immigration, Gumballs, and Poverty, and it will show you exactly, with this gumball demonstration, what I've just said to you. The Third World is adding 80 million more new babies net gain every year. They cannot be sustained, and therefore they are coming over to first world countries. And the second, which is called Immigration Off the Charts by Roy Beck, I just talked to him 3 weeks ago, that video should be seen, those 2 videos should be seen by every American citizen, because it's going to show you that we're not only going to jump from 300 million back in 2006 to 440 million. In other words, 140 million more people on our way to going to 625 million by 2095, and that's all because of immigrants and their birth rates. And he's only talking about the legal ones in this demonstration of gumballs. If you start adding all the illegals that are coming across, and that's an average of over 500,000 per year, but this year already over 1 million have crossed our borders illegally, then you start talking about their birth rates at 900,000 a year. Get that number. The immigrants that come to our country birth 900,000 more babies every year. Then you can see we are going to add 140 million, and in fact, we are now already 30 million into it since 2006. We're at 330 million, not counting all the illegals, and you just add another 110 million, and we will be at 440 million by 2050. 31 years from now.
Wow.
Wow is right. And these are facts, folks. They're not fear-mongering. They're not xenophobic. They're not racist. They're not nothing. Because when this number manifests itself, and I can tell you this, I've traveled through Asia. I've traveled through Bangladesh. I've traveled to China. I've traveled to India. When the numbers manifest, there are no solutions. They become irreversible and unsolvable problems. And once we let this happen to ourselves, because we keep allowing legal and illegal immigration, then we at some point will be in the same boat as those in Africa, those in India, and those in China, and those in Mexico.
Okay.
Am I making myself clear, Richard? Because I want every listener to understand, you can't sit by and just watch this happen, because your kids are going to be in the crosshairs of this extraordinary destruction of America.
That's
and
right.
I mean, it's coming. I mean, it's not if we continue on this path, allow this kind of immigration influx into our country and the birth rates. After we chose a stable society, the American female has been averaging 2 children or less per woman since 1970. That's all colors of people here in America. We use intelligence and birth control. Then we will be the next China, or the next India, or the next Africa, or the next Mexico. And there will be nothing to solve it once these numbers land on us.
It's going to be horrible if that comes to pass.
It's going to be worse than horrible, I can tell you.
Oh,
I've seen what horrible is in my travels around the world.
By the way, I read where along the southern border of the United States, there's 1 million people there living in abject poverty. It's I don't
They're
think
called colonials.
we're aware
You're correct.
of it. They're just inside the border.
That's correct. On the Rio Grande. I've got pictures. There's 1 million of them. The New York Times did a story on them. They're called the colonias, or new neighborhoods. They have no sewage. They have no streets. They have no lights. They have no electricity. They are just simply the slums of Mexico City. And I've traveled all over Mexico. I've seen the slums of Mexico City. They live in shacks. They do their business every morning with their chickens. There's no sanitation. There's unbelievable disease. And that's what's now growing on the border from Brownsville all the way to certainly to San Diego. I mean, I've seen it personally. That's right.
It's incredible to have so much poverty right there, just inside our border.
That's correct.
That's all they want to do is get inside. I don't know what good that does them, but
well, it's even worse down there in Mexico. That's what it does them. You have to understand, Mexico is 1/5 the size of America, yet it houses 120 million people. Okay, and it's a desert, and it has it's 1/5 the size of America, and yet it has 120 million people. So you can see there's no way to feed them. There's no way to educate them. There's no way. Well, in fact, the Mexican culture doesn't really care about education, unfortunately, and that's why the average Mexican is mostly illiterate, functionally illiterate. And of course, the only thing they can do is simply grow crops or do redundant jobs, lay pavement or concrete or clean beds or whatever, and that's what places like Marriott hotels and Holiday Inns love to have, that kind of modern-day slave labor, and that's what it is. You can pay these people just enough to keep them alive and then put them in a trailer and then they report to work there. So your Marriott hotel in your room has nice clean sheets and nice, really nice towels every day, but they simply go back to their trailer and live in abject poverty. So there's nothing fair about any of this, but the big money corporations, they could care less. And that's why you notice that illegal immigration has not stopped in 30 years since the 1986 amnesty. And the reason for that is because the money is crossing the palms of all these senators, 100 senators, and the 435 House members. That's why you never see term limits, because they don't want to stop their forever careers there in the Congress. And they're never going to do anything to stop illegal immigration or mass immigration to America, because they're all dependent on the big corporation monies to keep them in their million-dollar lifestyles. Am I wrong, or am I wrong,
No,
or am
that's
I
exactly
right,
right.
Richard? You're darn right I'm right. I know exactly what I'm talking about because I've seen it.
Well, Frosty, I'm sitting up here listening. I'm just listening between the conversation between the two of you guys, and I've been here, and I really appreciate your background, and I appreciate
Thank you.
the things that you're sharing with us, because it's a very important issue.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. Thank you.
And I guess the only thing I will throw out to you is that I'm gonna throw a word out to you for the table, maybe for discussion. Maybe and you mentioned it, but in other words, but from a layman's standpoint, greed, right? Greed. Among us, you understand what I'm saying? We are major contributors to this issue.
That's exactly right. And I want every person listening to this tonight, because I know I'm being very articulate. I'm just going to tell you, I'm giving you straight facts. Any one of you can go to any source that I've given you, go to any other source, and you will see that everything I'm sharing with you tonight is fact. And I don't care if you're a brown American, a black American, a white American, a red American, a yellow American, whatever your race, creed, or color. Every single one of us, as Americans, are going to suffer major consequences with this next 140 million people that come into our country with no affinity to be Americans whatsoever. We may have our race problems since Lord knows when, the Civil War and so forth, but black Americans, white Americans, and brown Americans we all have one thing in common. We've been through all of this together.
Right.
Some of my best friends are black. I have very dear Hispanic friends, and we all speak English, and we all hold that this is our country, and we see that we're losing it. We're losing it to people who have no affinity to America, do not care about the English language, do not care about the American laws, do not care about being an American citizen. And so I really appreciate what you've just said, because we're in it. We're all in this boat together. And I think it was Ben Franklin who said we better all hang together, or we're all going to hang separately.
Yeah.
Do you see any foreseeable solutions or reactions from our standpoint that we can do today to counter some of this?
Yes, we sure can. When I started with NumbersUSA.com and Roy Beck over 20 years ago now, and I just saw Roy 3 weeks ago, he's still a fantastic guy, and of course he's been called every name in the book. Racist, xenophobe, nativist, you name it. Of course, I've been called the same thing. But the one thing that shields both Roy Beck and others like John Rowe or yours truly is that we're shielded with integrity. Because what we do is speak the facts. And what we do is care about America. We care about the future generations, black, white, brown, red, or yellow. It doesn't make any difference. We care about America's future. And so Numbers USA went from 50,000 when I started with them 20 years ago. It's now approaching 10 million Americans. So every one of you tonight, if you could join Numbers USA for free, you get a notice once or twice a month on a bill coming into Congress, and you can absolutely give a pre-written letter to your 2 senators and House member and say, I like this bill, vote for it, or no, I don't like this bill, don't vote for it. You can even write a little P.S. at the bottom, and you will be part of 10 million people. Well, if you start telling 10 of your friends to join NumbersUSA.com, guess what? you could then make it 20 million people in numbersusa.com, and then that's possible to get to 30 and 40 and 50 million people, and we would be such a force in American politics that they must at some point deal with us, because it even gives you a report card on what your own senators are doing. My 2 senators here in Colorado have an F-. My House member has an F- when it comes to immigration because they have done nothing to stop illegal immigration.
Right.
That's Michael Bennett, who was running for president on a Democratic ticket here, but I think he's dropped out. And Hickenlooper, who was the governor of Colorado, was a sanctuary governor. And then Cory Gardner was a Republican, and he is a Republican. He's done nothing about illegal immigration. He's done nothing to introduce laws to stop the anchor babies, which are 300,000 illegal mothers jumping the borders every year,
That's right.
birthing their child, and we are paying for it K through 12 plus housing. And then you've got the diversity visas. We give 50,000 diversity visas every year to people from all over the world that have no education, no affinity to America, no ability to contribute. They all go on welfare. It's called the golden ticket. And none of the senators and none of the House members will introduce bills to stop anchor babies, diversity visas, or the million people coming in every year. They just let this continue as they live behind their gated communities with their $1 million paychecks.
One of the ideas that I had, you say the government can't do too much, but I still say if the
Well,
U.S.
it could if
government...
we force it, but we don't. Too many people are too apathetic.
Yep. I agree.
If the U.S. government would change it so that they don't give credit for having children at all, and as a matter of fact, once you have 2 or maybe 3, you'd start being assessed a charge. It just to make it the absolute opposite of the way it is now. They don't realize how much of a problem overpopulation is. It is just horrible. And it's catching up to it.
And unfortunately, Richard, they don't care.
Okay.
You can go up to any senator in the United States, and not a single one of them has any concern about overpopulation in America. You can go to all your House members. There's only a couple. There's Steve King there in Iowa. There's Peter King in New York. There's a Cotton from Arkansas who's a senator. I forget his first name. Joe Cotton. His name is Cotton. He wanted to cut all immigration legal half. But guess what? He gets completely nullified by the Democrats, and the Democrats, they can't wait to have as many illegal and legal immigrants because those are new voting blocks. They all vote for the Democrats because they all vote for the freebies.
Yep.
You all have to understand there are 48 million people in this country who are living on food stamps. And that's primarily what they get from the Democrats is all this food stamps and Section 8 housing. So what you have is a demographic that simply votes for all its freebies, and so that's what they do. And that's what we're facing, and that is why you're not seeing, that's why we should have term limits, but they'll never vote term limits in because they don't want to be term limited because they all want to stay in their little club, which is called the U.S. Congress, and screw the American people as they have been doing for the last 30 years. Does anybody in the audience tonight think that it has any rational sanity to having 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan for 18 years, costing us $6 trillion, killing all of the 6,000 of our troops, and we've got 22 suicides by military personnel and veterans every day now.
That's
22.
Right.
Look it up if you think I'm kidding.
Right. You're right.
Go to Warrior Project, woundedwarriorproject.org. 22 of our finest, and that's military U.S. Marines.
Yep.
My daddy was a U.S. Marine, and Army. These people are committing suicides at the rate of 22 a day.
That's right.
That's right.
You're right.
I know.
It's we've got a few minutes left, and I want to tie this up before we get through. This show should be on maybe by tomorrow, maybe on YouTube under Independent Producers Organization. My name, Richard Carpenter. You should be able to find it that way if that's what you want to hear anything like this again. Of course, I'm also going to try to take it out to the other studio or two. So I wanted to make sure I covered that. Again, YouTube, I do plan on having it out there. We also want to thank our crew. But go ahead, Frosty, just any more words to tie up.
Well, and thank you. And for everyone who's said something on this show, God bless us one and all. We're in so much trouble in this country right now. And so numbersusa.com, get those 2 videos out to everyone. There's also balance.org, which is another, it's called carryingcapacitynetwork.com or .org. But Carrying Capacity Network shows you what's happening to us. The key is support the numbersusa.com and get those videos out to everyone. The more we educate ourselves as citizens, and then the more we take action. I mean action. Write those letters. Call into your senators. Tell them what you think. And there's a phone calling crew. And wouldn't it be great if we went from 10 million in Numbers USA to well over 20 or 30 or 40 million? Yeah. I guarantee you we would force all of these apathetic and incompetent senators and House members to take action. We need to stop all immigration in the United States, or what I call ingress-egress solution. If 100,000 people egress the country every year, then we can take in 100,000 of people who are educated, who speak English and want to be Americans. That'd be fine. But in the end, we must stop mass immigration into our country, both legal and illegal, or we're simply not going to survive the 21st century. And so I'll come back again and give you more facts and figures on this, but get yourself in gear, folks, because your kids are going to be living the nightmare of 2050 with another 140 million people in this country. And they're not going to be Americans. They're going to be foreigners.
That's right. I guess they're coming from everywhere.
Yeah, well, there's over 45 million foreigners in this country right now, and 45 million people that are here. They're creating, again, parallel societies, and they have nothing of interest in our country except for all the freebies that they're getting because they're immigrants.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Well, other than the fact, I really appreciate your comments tonight, and hopefully, if you will, it's unfortunately that we're looking at about 10% among us at this point in time, and we're fighting against the 90%. You got me?
That's correct. You're exactly right.
And that's really a sad situation, because what you're just sharing with us should be in the school system. You know what I mean? It should be in the books.
It should. I should be getting with these facts and figures that I'm giving you. This program should be on 60 Minutes.
Yes.
I've tried to get on 60 Minutes for 20 years now. I've tried to get on NPR. I've tried to get on Meet the Press. I've tried to get on Face the Nation. I've tried to get on Fox. I've tried to get on CNN, and none of them will touch these facts. They will not touch them.
They don't want to hear about
what they do is suppress any of this information, and that's why the American people are not up in arms, because they just don't know what's going on. But I can tell you this: travel to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and go among the Somaliland, and go to Detroit, Michigan. I used to work in Detroit. Go to Joy Road, mosques everywhere. Go to Ford Road. Go to Telegraph. Go anywhere in Detroit now. It's all Arabic writing everywhere, with mosques everywhere. Women are in their burqas, of course, which is like being behind a beehive. And you're no longer America when you walk into Minneapolis or even Minnesota or Miami or certainly in Lewiston, Maine.
You're right.
It's just not America anymore, folks.
Right.
I don't know how.
And we're not going to get it back.
Wake up.
I don't know how it could change that much.
Now we got to wake up.
Just having people coming in. Well, okay, we're just have seconds left, and so thanks again, Frosty.
Thank you, Richard.
The sound was good. Everything was good about this show.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. God bless.
Many blessings. God bless America.
God bless America.